Have you ever noticed the more you try to explain yourself, the more people twist your words? The more you react, the more power you unknowingly give away. In a world addicted to noise, attention, and overreaction, silence isn't weakness anymore. It's a strategy. We live in a time where everything is a performance. Say something honest and it's taken out of context. Speak your truth and it's used against you like a weapon. Even your most vulnerable emotions, your anger, your pain, are turned into entertainment for others. That's not a conversation. That's a psychological game. So what's the strongest move you can make in a game that's rigged against you? You stop playing. Because silence, when chosen with intention, isn't empty, it's powerful. It says, I know who I am. I don't need to explain it to you. I won't let your chaos pull me out of my peace. And here's the twist. The moment you stop defending yourself, something much greater begins. Time, karma, truth. These forces don't need your help. They just need your silence to do their work. So before you rush to react, ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Sometimes the most powerful answer is no answer at all. Let's face it, few things cut deeper than being lied about. Your reputation gets questioned. Whispers spread. People start looking at you differently, even before you've had a chance to speak. And your first instinct, you want to explain, to defend yourself, to set the record straight so no one misunderstands who you really are. But here's the brutal truth. The more you explain, the more suspicious you look, and the more you chase clarity, the more chaos they'll create. Why? Because people who spread lies about you, they're not after the truth. They're after your reaction. They want you flustered. They want to see you spiral. They want you to fight, because the moment you do, they twist that reaction into proof. Proof that you're guilty. Proof that you're unstable. Proof that maybe there's something to hide. This is where Stoicism becomes your armor. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not true, do not say it. If it is not right, do not do it." That's it. You live by your integrity, not their opinions. So what should you do instead? You stand still. You stay calm. You say less. Because when truth is on your side, you don't need to fight for it. It fights for you. Let me tell you a story. There was a man, we'll call him James. He worked hard, showed up every day, earned the respect of his peers. Then one day someone accused him of something he didn't do. Just a whisper at first. But it spread like wildfire. People started avoiding him, doubting him, treating him like the rumor was fact. James wanted to scream, to call a meeting, to demand they listen, but he didn't. Instead, he chose silence. He kept doing his work. He held his composure. And most importantly, he let time do what emotion never could. A few weeks later, the truth surfaced. The accuser had a history of manipulation. The same tactics used on James had been used on others before. And because James never lashed out, never lowered himself, he didn't just clear his name, he kept his dignity. That's the quiet strength of a Stoic. So if you're ever in a situation where your character is under attack, remember, this truth needs no defense. It just needs time. Let your silence be the contrast to their noise. Let your integrity speak louder than your words ever could. Because in a world where reaction is currency, the man who stays calm is the man who stays in control. Let's talk about betrayal. Not the kind that shocks you with loud drama, but the kind that breaks you quietly. It doesn't come from your enemies. It comes from someone you trusted deeply. A partner, a friend, a family member. Someone who knew where your heart was soft and still decided to wound it. And the moment you discover the truth, it hits like a wave you didn't see coming. Your chest tightens, your mind races, and your first impulse to confront, to demand answers, to ask the one question echoing in your soul. How could you? But here's the brutal truth that Stoic wisdom teaches us. Most people who betray you have already justified it. They've told themselves a story that makes it okay. Or worse, they don't care enough to explain at all. So what happens if you beg for clarity? You don't get closure. You reopen the wound. And instead of healing, you feed their ego with your pain. Because here's what many people don't realize. Your reaction is their reward. They want your rage, your sadness, your heartbreak, because it means they still have power over you. So what if you gave them nothing? No breakdown, no angry message, no dramatic confrontation, just silence. That's where real strength lives. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Betrayal is friction. It's painful, yes, but it clarifies. It separates what's real from what's convenient. It forces you to confront one essential truth. Not everyone you love is meant to stay. Let me share a story. There was a woman, we'll call her Sarah. She had a best friend for over a decade. They shared dreams, secrets, celebrations, a sisterhood, so she thought. Until one day, Sarah discovered that her closest friend had betrayed her, revealed her private struggles, mocked her successes behind closed doors, all out of jealousy or insecurity or maybe ego. Sarah wanted to confront her, to lay it all out, to unleash the pain, but she didn't. Instead, she chose silence. No revenge, no explanation, just a quiet exit. And do you know what happened? The friend waited for the drama, for the argument. She was ready to defend herself, to justify, to fight. But Sarah gave her nothing, and in that nothingness was a mirror. Silence reflects back everything people don't want to see in themselves. It holds up their guilt, it exposes their emptiness, and often that echo is louder than any scream ever could be. So what should you do when someone betrays you? Accept who they really are, not who you hoped they were, not who they used to be, but who they've shown themselves to be now. Don't explain yourself to someone who already discarded your worth. If they wrote your value in pencil, you don't owe them ink. Walk away in silence, not to punish, but to protect your peace. Because silence after betrayal isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And one day that silence will echo back to them louder than anything you ever could have said. Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone took a shot at you, not physically, but verbally? Maybe a sarcastic jab in a meeting, a backhanded compliment, a comment made just loud enough for others to hear. It's subtle sometimes, almost hidden behind a smile, but it stings. And your instinct, you want to fire back. You want to show everyone you won't be disrespected. You want to defend your pride. But here's the truth that Stoicism teaches us. Insults are not designed to reveal truth. They're designed to provoke reaction. They're not about accuracy. They're about control. Because the moment you snap, defend yourself, or match their energy, you've entered their arena. And that's the trap. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That means you don't stoop down to their level just to prove you can fight. Because true confidence doesn't shout, it stays still. Let me share a story. There was a man, we'll call him David. He'd just received a well-deserved promotion at work. He worked hard, stayed humble, and earned the respect of many. But not everyone was happy for him. At the company event in front of colleagues and leadership, a jealous coworker smirked and said, "Wow, I guess they're handing out promotions to just anyone now." The room went quiet. All eyes turned to David. They were waiting for the comeback, waiting for him to clap back, waiting for the drama. But David didn't flinch. He didn't raise an eyebrow. He didn't defend his worth. He just smiled gently and said nothing. That silence, it hit harder than any clever reply ever could. Because silence does something insults can't handle. It removes the fuel. And when there's no fire to feed on, even the loudest attacker burns out. You see, people who throw insults are often seeking validation through conflict. They want your reaction to feel powerful. But when you give them nothing, they're left with their own insecurity exposed and unanswered. So what should you do when you're insulted? Recognize the bait. Not every comment deserves your attention. If it's meant to provoke, it's not worth your peace. Let your stillness speak. When your face doesn't twitch, when your voice stays calm, you communicate something far louder than words. You don't control me. Hold your frame. Confidence doesn't argue. Self-respect doesn't explain. When you rise above the noise, they rise to nothing. In a culture obsessed with reaction, the rarest power is stillness. So the next time someone tries to insult you, not because they're brave, but because it's the only way they feel seen, remember this. The strongest man in the room isn't the one with the loudest voice. It's the one who refuses to be moved. Because when you master your silence, you master the moment. And no insult, no sarcasm, no mockery can take that away from you. Have you ever tried to reason with someone who's always the victim? No matter what happens, they're never responsible. They're always misunderstood. They twist every confrontation into a sob story. And suddenly you're not trying to solve a problem anymore. You're defending yourself from a play you didn't audition for. This is what Stoic philosophy calls a trap of emotional manipulation, because these people, what I like to call victim players, aren't looking for solutions. They're not seeking clarity. They're seeking control, and they've learned the most effective way to gain it. By flipping the script, they cry, they deflect, they make themselves the wounded one, and suddenly you're the aggressor. And the harder you try to explain yourself, to calmly show the facts, the worse it gets. Because now, it looks like you're attacking someone who's already hurting, and to everyone watching, you become the villain in their performance. Epictetus warned us about this centuries ago. He said, "To complain is always non-productive and never appropriate." Victim players don't complain to fix anything. They complain to manipulate the narrative. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman, we'll call her Rachel. She worked with someone who constantly twisted reality. If she was late, it wasn't her fault. If a mistake happened, it was someone else's miscommunication. And when anyone tried to hold her accountable, she cried. She deflected. She claimed to feel unsafe. Rachel, being a rational and compassionate person, tried to reason with her. She brought evidence. She stayed calm. She even offered private conversations to resolve the issue. But every time it backfired, because Rachel was speaking facts and the other woman was performing feelings. And here's the hard truth in our world. When reason argues too long, emotion wins the audience. So Rachel made a decision. She stopped explaining. She stopped playing the game. She chose stoic silence. And something amazing happened. Over time, people started noticing the patterns, the manipulation, the drama that seemed to follow this person everywhere she went. The truth, it surfaced, not because Rachel fought for it, but because she gave it space to rise on its own. That's the power of stepping back. So how do you deal with someone who weaponizes victimhood? Don't defend yourself. They're not listening, they're performing. And the more you try to clear things up, the deeper you're pulled into their emotional theater. Stay emotionally detached. Observe, don't absorb. When you remain calm, their chaos becomes visible. Trust karma and repetition. People may believe them once, maybe even twice, but patterns don't lie. Eventually, the mask falls. At the end of the day, you don't owe clarity to someone who profits from confusion. Let them play their role. Let them gather their audience. Let them run their script. Because silence, genuine, grounded silence, is the one thing they can't manipulate. And when the final curtain falls, truth won't need applause. It will simply remain. Have you ever felt invisible even when you were always there? You show up, you check in, you send the text. Remember the birthdays, ask how their day went. You give and give and give, but one day it hits you. No one asks about your day. No one reaches out unless you do first. And suddenly you start wondering, am I being appreciated or am I just convenient? Here's the hard truth. The more you try to prove your worth to someone, the less they see it. Because people rarely value what's always available. They value what they might lose. It's a paradox of human nature. When something or someone is always within reach, they assume it'll always be there. And in that comfort, they stop noticing. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "Time discovers truth, and sometimes the truth they need to discover is your absence." Let me share a story. There was a man, we'll call him Jake. He was the reliable one, the friend who remembered your anniversary, the co-worker who brought coffee without being asked, the partner who never forgot to say, "Drive safe." But over time, Jake began to notice a pattern. When he stopped reaching out, no one checked in. When he stopped giving, no one noticed. His presence had become background noise, expected, assumed, overlooked. At first he was hurt, then he was quiet. He didn't send angry messages, he didn't demand attention. He just stopped showing up in the same way. And what happened? The ones who genuinely cared, they noticed the shift. They reached out, they made an effort. The rest, they disappeared. And that right there was Jake's answer. Because here's the truth, you don't need to chase people to prove you're worthy. Your absence will do the work for you. So what should you do when your value is ignored? Stop chasing. If they can't see your worth while you're present, let them feel it when you're gone. Say nothing. Silence forces awareness. It creates space for reflection. Sometimes it's not your presence that wakes people up, it's your disappearance. Observe who shows up. The people who truly matter won't need reminders. They'll sense the shift. They'll feel the silence and they'll move toward you, not away. At the end of the day, you don't prove your worth with effort. You prove it with distance, because those who are meant to be in your life will feel the emptiness your silence leaves behind, and those who never valued you will simply fade with the noise. Let your absence speak. Let it echo in the spaces they once took for granted, and never beg to be seen by those who chose to look away. Let's talk about provocation. Not the explosive kind you see in movies, but the subtle, persistent needling kind that creeps into meetings, family dinners, online threads. It's when someone keeps poking, not to resolve anything, but simply to pull a reaction out of you. Maybe they roll their eyes when you speak. Maybe they throw sarcastic comments in front of others. Maybe they phrase things just vague enough to slip past accountability while still cutting you down. And you feel it, the burn, the rise in your chest, that need to respond, to defend, to snap. But here's what most people don't realize. A provocateur doesn't want to fight, they want control. And the moment you react, you hand it to them. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic emperors, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." And that's the key. The goal isn't to win the argument, it's to stay in control of yourself. Let me share a story. There was a man, we'll call him Adam. He worked with someone who lived for chaos. In every meeting there'd be a jab, a passive-aggressive comment, a joke that wasn't a joke. And Adam, he used to take the bait. He'd defend himself, argue back, walk away exhausted, until one day Adam made a decision. He wouldn't react, not even a flinch. At the next meeting, when the usual provocation came, he simply smiled, nodded calmly, and said nothing. No eye roll, no sigh, just stillness. And do you know what happened? The co-worker blinked, fumbled, looked confused. Because when you're used to playing with fire, you don't know what to do when the match doesn't light. Over time, the provocations faded. Why? Because without a reaction, there's no reward. That's how fire dies. Not with force, but with starvation. So what do you do when someone keeps trying to provoke you? Recognize the pattern. Repetition reveals intent. If someone always stirs conflict, it's not personal, it's a strategy. Hold your frame, your breath, your tone, your posture. Don't let their storm knock you off balance. Let your calm be your counterattack. The more unshakable you are, the more powerless they feel. Because here's the truth, not everything that provokes you deserves your energy. And not every opponent is worth a response. In a room full of shouting, the strongest man isn't the loudest, he's the one no one can move. His silence isn't empty, it's armor. So the next time someone tries to push your buttons, don't respond. Don't react. Just return to yourself. And let them be left alone with their need for control. Have you ever walked away from someone and then watched them realize what they had? Only after you were gone. It's strange, isn't it? How people can overlook your love, your effort, your presence until it becomes absence. Suddenly the silence you left behind becomes deafening. They remember the way you showed up, the way you cared when no one else did, the way you gave more than you received, and it hits them. They didn't just lose a person, they lost a presence, a rhythm, a light, and by the time they realize it, it's too late. But here's something hard to hear, yet freeing to accept. If someone only starts to value you after you leave, they never truly valued you when it counted. And the worst mistake you can make is to go back just because they finally noticed. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And that includes being the master of your boundaries, of your peace, of your worth. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman, we'll call her Olivia. She gave everything to her relationship. Time, love, patience. She showed up consistently, but her partner, he grew complacent. He assumed her presence was permanent. The check-ins became one-sided. The small gestures unnoticed. The appreciation faded. And Olivia, like many of us, stayed quiet for a long time, hoping it would change, that he would see her again. But one day she didn't beg. She didn't yell. She didn't demand attention. She just left. No drama, no speech, just a quiet, firm goodbye. At first he brushed it off. He thought she'd come back. She always did. But this time was different. Weeks turned into months, and the silence grew louder than any argument ever could. Then came the texts, the apologies, the "I've changed," the "I finally understand." But by then, Olivia had healed. She had found her peace, and that silence, it had become her freedom. So what should you do when someone regrets losing you? Don't make it easy for them to return. If your worth was invisible while you were present, your absence needs to stay visible. Resist the urge to explain. Let them feel the full weight of their actions. Closure isn't something you owe, it's something they earn. Stand firm in your silence, not out of spite, but out of respect for yourself. Because the truth is, they had access to you, and they wasted it. Now let them sit with that, not through punishment, but through the reality you no longer choose to carry them. In a world that begs for noise, your silence becomes a revolution. It says you don't get to walk in and out of my life and expect the door to stay open. You don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to perform pain to be validated. And you definitely don't need to go back just because they miss what they took for granted. Let them regret. Let them remember. But don't let them return, because sometimes the greatest closure is never reopening the door. Let's be honest. We live in a world that rewards noise, louder opinions, faster reactions. Everyone's shouting to be seen, to be right, to be remembered. But here's a quiet truth that Stoic wisdom whispers: you don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to fight to win. And you don't need to explain to have value. Because silence is not weakness. It's not surrender. It's not passivity. It's the language of someone who has learned how to master themselves. When you fall silent intentionally, calmly, you're not giving up. You're taking your power back. You're stepping out of their game, out of the traps of manipulation, out of the constant need to defend, perform, or prove, and you're letting the universe do what it does best: reveal the truth, restore balance, and return what was always meant for you. See, a Stoic doesn't chase approval. A Stoic doesn't beg for closure. A Stoic doesn't collapse under conflict. They simply step back and let time, truth, and karma speak the final word. So if someone lies about you, if someone betrays you, if they mock, provoke, dismiss, or regret losing you, remember this: you don't have to respond. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to carry it. Just observe, breathe, step into stillness. Because in that stillness, you'll find something most people never touch: freedom. And not the kind that's granted by anyone else. The kind that comes from within. The kind no one can take away. You are not what they say. You are not what they did. You are not your reaction. You are the space that refuses to be moved. So the next time the world tries to drag you into noise, ask yourself, what if your silence is the strongest sound in the room?